All right, so today we're finishing Chapter 9 TRIG by doing the study guide, and then we're going to do the test today as well, or if you need to do it later, you can. For number 1, we're doing secant. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So since cosine of theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse, secant is going to be the reciprocal, which means to flip it, which means hypotenuse over adjacent. So for number 1, we're going to have hypotenuse. This one's the hypotenuse, 17. And then adjacent is the one touching it right here. Opposite is 8. We don't want 8. We want 15. So it's going to be hypotenuse, which is 17, over 15. So the answer is A. All right, for number 2, we're going to have sine. And hopefully you know that sine by now is going to be opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite from this angle is 5. And then hypotenuse is 13. So 5 over 13. So the answer is C. So number 1 is A, and number 2 is C. All right, moving on. In case you needed to have that, if that was too fast, there it goes. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and delete it and move on. All right, so for the number 3 and number 4. All right, so on number 3, we have tangent. Tangent of the theta is going to be opposite over adjacent. And in this case, opposite is 12. So we're going to have 12 on top. And adjacent is the one next to it, which is 16, not hypotenuse, that's 20. So we have 12. It's opposite over adjacent, which is 16, 12 over 16. Notice that that's not one of the answers, so we have to reduce. Let's go ahead and divide the top by 4 and the bottom by 4. That's what's a common factor, and we get 3 over 4. So the answer is D, 3/4. Number 4, cotangent. Cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So as we know, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So that means cotangent is adjacent over opposite. All right, so in this case, opposite is 12, so adjacent is 5. Hypotenuse is 13. We want, and then opposite is 12, which is this one. We want adjacent first, so 5, and then we want opposite, which is 12, so 5 over 12. And that would be this one for cotangent. All right, so go ahead and write that one down, and then we're going to erase and move on. All right, moving on. So 3 was D, and 4 was B. Okay, so moving on to 5 and 6, use a calculator. So when we type this in, make sure you're in degree mode. DEG stands for degree, so make sure you're in degree mode. So we're going to do sine of 425 in our calculator. And I typed that in, make sure you're in degree mode, and we got C. After you type it into your calculator, 0.9063. Then we're going to do cosine, and this time we're going to do cosine of 122. Make sure you're in degree mode. And you type it in your calculator, and you get B, negative 0.5299. All right, that's because we rounded our answers to the nearest 10,000th. All right, we're going to move on. So make sure you write down 5 was C and 6 was B. All right, so let's move on to the next page. We have number 7, tangent of 315, and this time they want the exact values. They don't want the calculator this time. If you do want to check your answer in the calculator, you can. Notice number 1 is the only one that won't be a decimal, but 8, 9, and 10 will be a decimal, so you're going to want to use your table or your unit circle that you figured out. So tangent of 315. 315 degrees is in this quadrant, which is quadrant 4, and 315 has a 45-degree reference angle. So this side is 1, this side is negative 1 because it's going down, and the hypotenuse is square root of 2. And so they want tangent, so 315 is over here. Tangent is opposite over adjacent, so it's going to be tangent of 315 is going to be opposite, which is negative 1, over adjacent, which is 1, and that simplifies to negative 1. You can also just look at your table or your unit circle, but your table that you filled out a week or 2 ago has all the answers to these. Tangent of 315 is negative 1. All right, cotangent of 30. So tangent of 30 is going to be opposite over adjacent using this triangle here. So we have 30 degrees. You can also just look at your table you filled out. And so we have opposite. This is square root of 3. This is 1. This is 2. So you have opposite is 1 over the square root of 3. But you want cotangent, so you have to flip it. So it becomes, you just flip this one, it becomes square root of 3 over 1, which is just square root of 3. That would be D. All right, 9, 60 degrees. All right, 60 degrees is in your first quadrant right here. 60 degrees. You get the 1 from this side, the 2 is the hypotenuse, and the 30 gets the square root of 3. And sine is going to be, let's see, opposite over hypotenuse. So square root of 3 over 2. So opposite over hypotenuse. Also, you can just use your unit circle and look for the y value, and it's square root of 3 over 2. You can also look for your table. And number 10, we have cosine of 210. 210 would be in quadrant 3. Over here, 210 is how far away from 180. So it looks like it's probably going to be 30 degrees away from 180. So I kind of drew it too low. It's probably a little bit higher than that. It's only 30 degrees away from 180. So this side gets the square root of 3 because it's the 30. It's going left. Down is the 60, which is down here. You can also just look at your unit circle, and the answer is going to be the x value because it's cosine. This is going down, and this is 2. So cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. So it should be negative square root of 3 over 2. Or look at your table for the answer. You can also do your calculator, but your calculator will give you a negative 0.866, and negative 0.866 is negative square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so that's it for that one. So 7 is C, 8 is D, 9 is B, 10 is A. All right, let's finish some more here before we move on. So make sure you get those written down. All right, so let's look at 11 and 12. 11 and 12 are a little bit tricky because you have the points. You're going to be drawing your triangle here. Now 4 is your x, it looks like, so that's going right. So that's x is 4. Down, your y value is negative 8. And now we need to do Pythagorean theorem to find the hypotenuse so we can do cosine, because you need hypotenuse for cosine. So you're going to do, let's see, 4 squared plus negative 8 squared equals, let's call the hypotenuse r for radius. Let's call it r, so r squared. So we have 16 plus 64 equals r squared. R squared is going to equal whatever 64 plus 16 is, which is 80. We're going to square root both sides. We get the square root of 80. If you would like to simplify that, 80 is the same thing as 16 times 5. So 16 times 5 is the same thing as 80. 10 and 8 don't work because you want numbers that have square roots. So 5 does not have a square root, but 16 does. The square root of 16 is 4. So 4 root 5 is what r is. So r is 4 root 5. Or you can put square root of 80, but that's not simplified. So now we want to do the cosine, which is going to be, the angle is always in the middle right here by the origin. And you want 4, which is your adjacent, over hypotenuse. So 4 over 4 root 5. That's what cosine is. All right, now the 4's canceled to get 1. So the answer is 1 over the square root of 5. Notice that's not simplified. So you multiply the bottom by the square root of 5 and multiply the top by square root of 5. I would just accept 1 over the square root of 5, but because we were looking for one of our answers here, you should simplify. Multiply the bottom by square root of 5 to get 5, because square root of 5 times square root of 5 is just 5. And 1 times square root of 5 is square root of 5. So that's the answer for 11 is B, square root of 5 over 5. Number 12, 3 and 4. That one's a lot easier to do. All right, so 3 is your x, 4 is your y. You don't know your hypotenuse unless you know the special triangle. There is a special triangle called the 3, 4, 5 triangle, but let's just assume you don't know that. So r is the radius, so we're going to do 3 squared plus 4 squared equals r squared. 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, and then we have r squared. 16 plus 9, that would be 25, is r squared. R, to find it by itself, you square root the 25, and you get r is 5. All right, so let's get rid of that. All right, so let's see here. After you get 5, that's what your hypotenuse is, 5. You're going to do sine and make sure the angle's in the middle here. Sine is going to be opposite over hypotenuse, so 4/5. Remember, opposite is the one directly across. So 4 over hypotenuse 5. All right, so 11 is B and 12 is A. Okay, number 13, coterminal angle. You are either going to, if it's a big angle, you're going to subtract 360 as many times as you want until you get answer between 0 and 360. If it's negative and low, you're going to add 360. So let's subtract 360, but when we do that, that's not enough, so we're going to subtract it twice. When we subtract 360 twice, we get an answer of 350. Now 350 is between 0 and 360, so we're good. You can subtract or add 360 as many times as you want. Coterminal angles are basically the same angle, just all the way around. So like if this is like 20 degrees and we want to go all the way around, it's the same thing as 360 plus 20, so 20 or add 360, 380. They're both the same angle. So that's what they're talking about for coterminal angles. You add 360 or subtract 360 as many times as you want. In number 14, you're going to add 360. All right, so you're going to add 360 on negative 252. And when you add 360, you will get 108. All right, so 13 is D and 14 is A. All right, go ahead and make sure you get that before I erase it. Okay, moving on. All right, so we're going to move on to the last two problems from this page. We have convert each degree measure into radians. So we're going to multiply by pi over 180 to all of it. So we're going to have 315 multiply by pi over 180. You can also just look at the unit circle. 315 is the same thing as 7 pi fourths, but you might not know that. You can look at your unit circle and see if it's on there. It is 7 pi fourths, and the reason why it's 7 pi fourths is when you do 315 pi over 180, you can divide the top by 5, but that's not big enough. So divide the top by the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is 45. So if you divide the top by 45, you get 7, and you still have your pi there. If you divide the bottom by 45, 180 divided by 45 is 4. Now, if you don't know what's in common, just keep doing 5, and then you'll have to do 9 or whatever until you get 7 pi fourths. All right, so on 270, you're going to also multiply that by pi over 180, and you get 270 pi over 180. If you don't know what's in common, well, the zeros are in common. Divide the top by 10, divide the bottom by 10. You get 27 pi over 18. Well, now you can divide the top by 9 or 3, but 9's bigger, so divide by 9 and divide the bottom by 9. And 27 pi divided by 9 is 3 pi, and 18 pi, or just 18, sorry, the pi's on top. 18 divided by 9 is just 2. So 3 pi over 2. You can check your answer. Pi is 180. So 3 times 180 divided by 2 is 270. So you should check your answer. Check your answer. Pi is 180. 3 times pi, which is 180, divided by 2 is 270. All right, so that's it for part 1. We're going to do part 2 in just a minute. All right, so that's it. I hope that you checked all your answers. I'm going to go ahead and erase it and stop the video. Thank you.